Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Pamela, and you are watching Pam Entertainment TV, where we review movies, television series, and incidents in pop culture just to see how those incidents affect our daily lives. Listen, we are about to get into this pop culture chat. I'll tell y'all really. I have the number of times and the number of weeks that I have started and then had to scrap it, start it again, and scrap it again. uh has been tremendous because so much information has been coming out, so many public opinions have been going on about this particular subject, and I wanted to make sure that I did this particular subject with the reverence and the grace that it needs, without succumbing to uh, polarizing issues, even though that this particular subject is a polarizing issue, because there are just so many nuances of this one particular case that has, when it first came out, there was so much disappointment. There was so much, again, polarizing opinions that, and for some people it was a very emotional thing, and we have to be very cognizant of that as well. uh for women, there is this split of, you know uh well, let me just tell you what we're going to be talking about. So this may be, I may not be having my face on because I want you all to pay more attention to what's up on the screen. So I'm going to make sure that that is what we're looking at, and we're going to add this to the screen. And we are talking about, here we go. I wonder, can I make this bigger? We're talking about Mr. Jonathan Majors, the public downfall of Jonathan Majors. So we're going to go in a few topics within this whole situation. And I wanted to do this because I it was a hot topic going into this, but also it pulled out some think pieces that we probably need to go over. Now, I will tell you that I will not be going as in depth, but I do just want to skate across the top so that everyone can kind of just, understand where they stand on something, where they stand on this issue, and we can just kind of go on. Now, we do understand that it's either tomorrow or Tuesday he goes back to court in Manhattan, uh for the charges. So let's just kind of go, let's keep going. Let's keep going, y'all. And so what we're going to be talking about is, who is Jonathan Majors. We're going to talk about the incident and the fallout, and we're going to briefly talk about the court of public opinion, trying a criminal case in the court of public opinion, and what are the upsides and what are the downsides, and what are some of, and that's where you'll start finding, when we start talking about the nuances of this case and why it seems to be such a polarizing issue. So I want to issue a trigger warning because we are going to be talking about domestic violence. If you or you know someone who has been a victim of domestic violence, I have up here the domestic violence hotline that you can call. Also, that you can text START to 88788, and you can then begin to get that person or yourself some help. So, what we're going to discuss in this first part about who is Jonathan Majors. We're going to go over briefly his personal history as reported by him. We're going to talk about his rise of stardom and acting in Hollywood. I'm just going to give my anecdotal when I first became aware of him. We're going to talk about the professional perception of Jonathan Majors and the public perception of Jonathan Majors. Now, all of this that I am speaking of is before the incident. So we're going to talk about the history as we knew it before the incident, his rise in his stardom in Hollywood before the incident. We're going to talk about the professional perception of Jonathan Majors, and we're getting that information from uh, publications and interviews that he has done. And then we're going to also get our public perception of Jonathan Majors. And I am pulling that information from tweets, I'm pulling that information from YouTube videos done about him. And again, this is prior to the incident. I'm also pulling from uh, just different places where people have the ability. So that's like YouTube, that's like Facebook, uh, that's like Twitter, that's like Instagram, that's like Lipstick Alley. So we're pulling from those places that we can get what the public perception of this man is. So, who is Jonathan Majors? Now, uh, I pulled this information from Wikipedia, and I understand that it can be modified and done, but this was just a better condensed information that I could get for him. They just basically said that he was born in Santa Barbara. He spent his early years with his family. He has a brother. He has a sister. He is a military brat. Um, his father was in the Air Force. At some point in time during Major's life, his father, and these are his words, had disappeared one day. He had abandoned the family, and that he resurfaced about 17 years later. So uh, they're not giving any in depth information what that meant. But it is an indication that for some reason it doesn't even say that whether or not that the family his mother got divorced, but I do remember other interviews that he did. I know he was on Higher Learning podcasts with Van Lathan and Rachel and Lindsay, and he mentioned his stepfather, so I am assuming that at some point that his mother and his father were divorced around that time. He also talked about him having a very difficult time. His family moved around several times into several different cities in Texas, so they were always on the move. Um, he also talked about that he attended a couple of high schools. A lot of that had to do with him being suspended and in school suspension. He talks about uh, his difficult childhood. Uh, he also talked a lot about fighting, and he fought a lot in school. He was in school suspension. He even talked about a time where he was homeless. He was not getting along with his stepfather, and he wasn't getting along with his mother, and so he had to live in his car. And he talked about being homeless, but he was working and he was still going to school. He also talked about in one of his in-school suspensions that this is when he discovered acting, and so that was something that sent him on a more positive trajectory, because he also spoke about shoplifting and being caught for shoplifting, and him being in trouble with the law, him being in trouble in school. He credits acting, or his passion behind acting, as sending his life towards a trajectory. He was able then to meet people who then were able to assist him to get to the next level, and with that he received a bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, and he later attended, and he was a graduate of Yale Drama, and he graduated from Yale in 2016. So this is the brief this is part of the personal history that we know. In other interviews, he had also mentioned that he has a daughter. I think at the last time that I remember that he spoke about his daughter, she was like 8 or 9 years old. So briefly, what we know about this man is that he had a very challenging childhood. He turned it around because of his love of acting. And we also see that he is a graduate of the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, and he's a drama Yale. He is a Yale School of Drama graduate. So when we talk about his rise in stardom and acting in Hollywood, now this is where I'm going to tell you where I was introduced to him. During the pandemic, we were, everybody was inside, everybody was watching TV, and I happened to come across everybody, like everybody else, you're Netflix and chilling, and you have gone almost to the end of your Netflix catalog, and then you switch to the next streaming service that you have, which for me was HBO, and I happened to come across Lovecraft Country. Now, I will say that I was receiving a lot of Instagram commercials about that, so it made me check it out. And plus, I was a fan of Journey Smollett, what she did in Eve's Bayou and Friday Night Lights, so I was familiar with her, so I went to check it out. And that's where we came across Jonathan Majors, who played Atticus Freeman in that show. And I will tell you that the show within itself was sci-fi and dealt with racial issues back in the 50s. But I will tell you that Jonathan Majors acting within that uh, series was phenomenal. He did go on to get an Emmy nomination for, I believe it was Best Supporting Actor or Best Actor, but his acting in there was phenomenal. Um, After that, I remember watching a lot of critics who were reviewing the show for YouTube, and they spoke about that he had done an indie film, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. So I was able to check that out, and I thought, wow, this guy is pretty good. He did a really good job in there. I think he did a really good job in Lovecraft Country. So I never thought that anything that he did or put his mind to that he couldn't do it. And so there was so much buzz about him. As you see the publications that I have across the thing, we have his alma mater, North Carolina, saying that the drama alum Jonathan Major is everywhere and he's just getting started. So they had a pretty full article, praiseworthy article talking about the alumnus and how much work he's doing and what he's doing and the path that he was creating for himself. We have News One that talked about the marvelous rise of Jonathan Majors. Again, they pretty much did the same type of piece and talked about how he was how his rise started and how he was enjoying what was going on. We have over here in the Guardian interviewed him, and the headline is, "I knew it would be okay. Jonathan Majors on his remarkable rise from troubled teen to A-lister." So, and then in the middle, we have Wired. This was recent, talking about Jonathan Majors enjoying his villain era. And that article went to go on that Jonathan had been cast in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and he had been cast in Creed 3 as the antagonist or the villain of the show. So we see that critics, it didn't matter. Critics were saying that he was a good actor. He was. They even described that he was the best thing in the show. I know, particularly with Creed 3 that just came out back in March, and they did a press tour for that. Critics were saying that Jonathan Majors' portrayal of Damian Anderson was so realistic that you felt like he was you felt him, whether you agreed with what he was doing or not, but you felt that emotion. He really portrayed the emotional and the depth of who that character was. Even so much so that I think I remember one critic saying that it didn't even seem like a Rocky esque movie. It seemed like something, it transcended something more, but it still was formulaic as far as the plot and everything. But he turned it into something that had a little bit more depth. So you see at that point that critics everywhere enjoys his art form, his approach to his art form. He has talked about his approach. I think one of the things that stood out to me with him was he talked about how he did not go back and watch himself in anything that he had done. He felt like that was weird, to watch himself perform any of his works. He would promote the film, he would do that, but he wouldn't necessarily watch it back or intentionally sit down and watch it back. So we want to get into what was the public's perception of Jonathan Majors prior to the incident. And pretty much when you looked at the feedback before, you saw that everyone perceived him as being a great actor. He was a star on the rise. They were particularly uh, there were a lot of people particularly favorable of the fact that he had three back-to-back movies in the theater. So back he had Devotion, and then it went from Devotion that was in the theaters. Then he had Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and then he had Creed 3. So those three movies at one point in time were all in the movie theater at the same time. Uh, Everyone really basically, again, he's a man that I guess his PR team at the time, and they crafted his image where you really didn't know that much about his personal life. And for me, I think that that's fine. I don't think, because I've always been told, I never ever 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 forget uh one of my relatives, and I want to say it was my mom, had said something like, never really get to know your favorite. Never get to know your favorite actor or really find out more information about them, because you'll be disappointed, because you'll find out that they are just average human beings like you, but their profession is in the public eye. So we didn't know that much about him. The only thing I remember, and I talked about it earlier about his personal life, that he would harp on, was the fact that he had a 9-year-old daughter and that he was single. Now, me saying that is going to mean something later. He always spoke respectfully of his family. He had high praises for his mom, his sister, and his brother. He talked about his father leaving the family, but he also talked about during the pandemic where he reconciled with his father. Um, so we knew about that. We knew a little bit about the again, I watched the podcast Higher Learning, where he talked about he had been suspended from school several times and from fighting, and how acting focused his life. Um, Now, the biggest brouhaha that happened before the incidents was back in February of this year. And what happened back in February is that he had done, or he was on the cover of Ebony magazine. He was the, is it cover guy? Cover guy for the photo for their Valentine's issue. And he did a spread through the magazine. And what sent people railing was the fact that, number one, he was wearing pink. Number two, his lips were pursed. Number three, he wore a big, oversized, feathered uh, overcoat. He didn't have it on. He had it draped over his shoulders. And then he had on some, I don't know what they call those, like boot pants or whatever. And he had that on. And I think he had a couple of series, because he had a series of outfits, as I recall. And there was this big brouhaha amongst uh, Black men and male identified Black women who were talking about the emasculation of a Black man, and him in that photo shoot wearing those colors, wearing the outfit. He was in essence making Black men seem um, effeminate, uh, homosexual. What was the other wording? Yeah, that he was questioning masculinity and all of its forms and all of this different things. So there was a big discussion, and then we find out later that the big, remember I talked about the big fluffy pink feathery overcoat that he wore over his shoulders. The photographer had to come out and explain that was a nod to the photographer's one of his favorite anime characters within One Piece. And once that came out, I think it didn't, it at that point it didn't matter. It, once the snowball of emasculation of Black men starts, it just snowballs into a lot of stuff. And a lot of people then started had a little distaste for Mr. Majors because he did that photo shoot. I don't know if it's in any other community, but I do know within the Black community, there is this really big uh, talk about the Illuminati and how Hollywood wants to emasculate a black man. And if a black man doesn't acquiesce to this emasculation, and we usually call it the wearing of the dress, if they don't wear the dress, then Hollywood will turn against them. All of this types of stuff. So these are types of public perceptions that were going on and conversations that were being had on Twitter, conversations that were being had on Lipstick Alley, conversations that were being had on Facebook, conversations. No, I couldn't find any of those conversations happening on. No, I'm telling a tale. They were also happening on Instagram as well, because you would have a blog pose a question, and then there would be different dialogue down in the comment section about this particular issue. So here we go. Again, I issued the trigger warning earlier, so we're going to talk about this. I gotta get my iPad, y'all. Get it ready for this issue. So what we're going to talk about is what happened to Jonathan Majors. Well, what he was arrested for, and how that arrest has impacted Give me a second, people. All right. So we're going to talk about the arrest. We're going to go in through the timeline of events, and we're going to talk about the loss of money and roles. Now, I am very much aware that once you start talking about this in any capacity, people are going to ask that you take sides. You either come up on one side or the other side. I am very much aware. I am very much aware that this is a very sensitive subject, and we want to be very sensitive to what's going on. What I am doing, I am looking for my flow chart in the app that I created it. And it doesn't seem like, did I not save it? I copied it somewhere and I did not save it. Oh, Lord. Okay, we're going to continue on. So let's talk about what happened. So we were made aware of the arrest on March 25th, 2023. TMZ broke the story. Here is the headline that came across, is that Jonathan Majors is arrested in New York for assaulting woman. Rep said he's done nothing wrong. So basically what we learned through the article is that he was arrested that Saturday morning on charges of strangulation, assault, and harassment. He was arrested in the Chelsea neighborhood, which we find out that he was arrested at his home. The sources told TMZ that the victim had visible injuries, including a laceration behind her ear, redness, and marks to her face. At that point, she was taken to the hospital and he was arrested. So there were several updates that happened, but what TMZ said that was reported to the police by the victim was that the girlfriend, and at that point, this is when we all learned that he had a girlfriend. And like I said, that's fine. We learned that I'm going to read it. Our sources say police were told the girlfriend saw another woman texting Majors, and she confronted him, trying to sneak a peek at his phone. We're told that the alleged victim claims this got Majors mad and that he allegedly grabbed her hand, and allegedly slapped her. We're also told that the alleged victim claims that he put his hands around her neck during this altercation. Our sources say that the woman was dropped off somewhere and that JM spent the night elsewhere. It appears the girlfriend went to the police the following morning and reported a crime. So then at 4:44 p.m., TMZ updated the story and said, here's what allegedly happened in the lead up to this. Per our law enforcement sources, police were told that the alleged victim is Major's girlfriend, and according to her, they got into an argument while in a taxi returning home from a bar in Brooklyn. And so that, coupled with what she reported to the police early, was the reason as to why the police had arrested Mr. Majors, because that's what she reported. At 5:03 a.m., which was the next day. No, it wasn't. It was later on. That's supposed to be 5:03 p.m. Judge released Jonathan Majors without bail at his Saturday night arraignment in Manhattan criminal court. Prosecutions charged the actor with misdemeanor assault, aggravated harassment, attempted assault, and harassment, and that he was due back in court in May. So these are the charges once again. They charged Jonathan Majors with misdemeanor assault, aggravated harassment, attempted assault, and harassment. So here we have the timeline of events. That's what I was looking for on my iPad, so I'm going to have to put my glasses on. Y'all know how I do it. Let me move this mic up a little bit. And so we're going to go over what the timeline as of today, what we are told what happened. So initially, again, on January 25th, around 1 a.m., Jonathan Majors and his girlfriend, they leave a bar in Brooklyn. Somewhere between 1 and 1:30, that is when Jonathan Majors received a text, and the girlfriend believed that Jonathan Majors was cheating. There was an attempt by her to take the phone, and then the alleged assault happened. Now, I go down, that's what I'm reading in the yellow, the first yellow box. Below that yellow box, it says the alleged assault happens, the cab stops, Jonathan Major gets out of the cab, gets another cab. The girlfriend is dropped off at a Chelsea Hotel club around 1:57 a.m. Now, I will tell you that the dates and the times are coming from the TMZ article and the New York Post article dated, I believe it was 4/19. Well, I have that article somewhere, but I believe it was the 4/19 article. This is where these timelines of events come from. This is the information where it comes from. So if you look at it, the yellow boxes are representative of the girlfriend's, the way she moved through the timeline. The red triangles are representative of Jonathan Majors' way he moved through the timeline. The light blue circles are just talking about what was supposed to have happened as these people are moving through this timeline. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And down at the bottom with the big green box that's the court date that we're going to have, that's going to be had for Jonathan Majors. And so according to that timeline, the girlfriend arrives home because apparently Jonathan Majors and his girlfriend were living together. She arrives home to the, hold up, I'm missing something. I'm going through. Okay. So she was dropped off at the club. She arrives home. Right. We're good. Around 3:45. So sometime between the club and her arriving home, there were 32 calls and text messages between that she had made to Jonathan Majors. So they had some big text conversation back and forth. So we find out about 9:30 a.m. there was a text and by Jonathan Majors telling her, "Did you leave the keys and goodbye?" He returns home at about 11:15, and according to, now this is information given to us in that article, in those two articles by Jonathan Majors' attorney, that 11:15 he arrives home. He finds that his bedroom door is locked. He calls the handyman, and the handyman comes and opens the door. Once the door is open, Jonathan Majors finds his girlfriend unconscious on the in the walk-in closet floor, and also he discovers that she had vomited into the bed. So for his concern, according to what they're saying in their documentation that they filed with the court, that he called the ambulance, he called the 911, because here in the United States, if you're out of the United States and in different states, when you call 911, you ask for an ambulance. I know in my state, you call 911 and you ask for an ambulance. Uh, the police come around the same time as the ambulance, because the police want to make sure that there is no quote unquote crime that has happened, or the ambulance company can request that the police meet go to the scene first to clear it, to make sure that there is no harm. So for instance, if I call an ambulance and say, hey, someone got shot, the police will arrive before the police will arrive at the same time as the ambulance. The police will clear the scene and then tell the ambulance people that they can come in and they can assist as they need to. It's not There is not a long period of time by that, because like I said, the ambulance will be there. If you call and say, my friend passed out and they're unconscious, the ambulance will come. So it just depends on what was told on the call in my state, whether or not the ambulance comes by itself or the ambulance comes with the police, or if you ask for the police will come. So I don't know if that's how it works in New York, but that's how it works here in my state. So I don't know if she regained consciousness when the police was there, or I don't know if she regained consciousness before the police came, but she regained consciousness and she talked to the police. And the police assessed the situation. The police reported that there was redness on her face and a laceration behind her ear. The police, it was reported that the victim had at first exclaimed that she didn't know what happened to her, but according to the documentation that the defense has filed with the court, they stated that the police was the first ones to mention strangulation, and that kept what's the word? It's not grooming, coercing. That's too strong, but that's the only word that I have about strangulation. And once she made the statement that, yeah, he put his hands around my neck, he hit me, he did this, that is when Mr. Majors was arrested, and uh, his girlfriend was transported to the hospital. So he spent a good majority of Saturday in jail. She went to the hospital. Uh, upon him being released from jail, there was a partial restraining order issued. I think at that time too that the prosecution had asked for a full restraining order, and the judge did not grant that at that time. So here's what we have going on after. So it was a partial restraining order uh, issued. So the next day, which was the 26th, the Army pulled their ad. Then the lawyer released the text messages. So we're going to talk about those text messages a little later. But the lawyer released the text messages, and at that time, the PR team quit. Now we were not told about the PR team quitting until in April, but at that time, his PR firm had quit. Then on the it was on the 17th. So the time that the management firm quit, that is when we learned that his PR firm had quit on the 30th. We also learned on the 17th that he had lost a deal with the Texas Rangers to do an ad. He was uninvited to the Met Gala. We were also told that his role in The Man in the Basement he had been released from that. We also learned that he was in talks to do an Otis Redding biopic, and he was released from that. And then he voluntarily stepped down from the Gotham board with the Sidney Poitier initiative. On the 18th of April, we learned that there were more victims cooperating with the Manhattan DA, and that was information that we received from Variety. On that day or the next day, I should have put the date, I'm sorry, but we see that Jonathan Majors, his team, his attorney filed evidence with the court, and that is when TMZ released the video stills of Jonathan Majors' girlfriend at a club after the alleged assault. So that was the timeline of the events as things were unfurling into the public. And I wanted to kind of go over that whole timeline before we get into other stuff, just so that you could see the complete thing as I remember. Because like I said, I was going to do this video earlier, but then so much stuff came out that I just really felt like I wanted to wait to make sure nothing else comes out. And I don't know if anything has come out as I'm making it right now. But I am doing this a couple of days before the court hearing, and I will do an initial follow-up video from what we get from the courts. So again, this is the fallout from the incident, and I pretty much have read everything through discussing the timeline. And you see how everything is kind of played out, and this is just in written form so that you all can see. But these are all the things that he had been removed from the March 25th arrest. So on March 27th, actually on the 26th, the defense had come out and said that they had all this evidence to prove that Mr. Majors was innocent of all the charges relayed against him. And they said that they had video footage from the ride, they had text messages, they had all kinds of other things, they had witness statements. They had claimed that they had a lot of stuff. To show that Mr. Majors was innocent. Right. And so the public was like, okay, well, if you've got all this information, then release it. And we'll talk about public opinion later on in here. But that was the sentiment. Like, okay, if you've got all this information, y'all need to release this. You need to release this information. This is really something that we need to hear or see. So then they released the text messages, or what they saw. Oh, and they also said that the victim had recanted twice. So they released these text messages to show or to prove that the victim had recanted. So this is the text messages. Now, this comes from TMZ. Apparently, the defense talked to TMZ about this and gave them this information. Now, I will tell you, this is probably, if you just let me tell it, this was probably the impetus as why the PR team left, but I'll go in more detail. But this to me was one of the reasons why the PR team probably quit, because they were doing things outside of what the PR team probably was looking for in Mr. Majors' best interest. So let's just read this, and we're going to read it from the top all the way down to the bottom. So up at the top, there is a text box that has been, we can't read what that says, but we know that that signifies to me that there was text. There were more texts going up. So there was a whole conversation going on. And from the tail end of that conversation, we see now the blue is supposed to be Jonathan Majors and the gray is supposed to be the girlfriend. Okay. So we see what the first initial text that we can actually legibly read says, "There's no note, just you knowing what happened." And then in the blue, we see, "Did you leave the keys? Goodbye." And then the next word has been redacted. And the Did you leave the keys? And goodbye happened at, it looks like 8:58 a.m. So about 6 p.m. Now, understand that between that time, before this next text that I'm about to read, Jonathan Major had been arrested and she had been transferred to the hospital. So her text reads, "Please let me know you're okay when you get this. They assured me that you won't be charged. They said they had to arrest you as protocol when they saw the injuries on me and they knew we had a fight. I am so angry they did this. I am so angry that they did. And I'm sorry you're in this position. We'll make sure nothing happens about this. I told them it was my fault for trying to grab your phone. I only just got out of the hospital. Call me when you're out." The next text bubble says, "I love you." And the last text bubble, which was dated on, I guess, the 25th at 9:32 p.m., she texted, "They just called again to check on me, and I reiterated how this was not an attack and they do not have my blessings on any charges being placed. I read the paper they gave me about strangulation and I said point blank, this did not occur and should be removed immediately. The judge is definitely going to be told this. She ensured this to me." So I guess she is whoever spoke to her, which I'm assuming is the police. "I know you have the best team and there's nothing to worry about. I just want you to know that I'm doing all I can my end. I also said to tell the judge to know the origin of the call was to do with me collapsing and passing out and your worry as my partner due to our communication prior. Out of care. She promised will be relayed." So these are the text messages that the defense said proved Mr. Major's innocent, Jonathan Major's innocence. So when you look at that and you talk from the public point of view, we looked at those texts and some folks that were experts in domestic violence issues and domestic violence cases had stated, number one, that victims usually recant a few times before um, they commit to getting out of that situation. They also read that's what the text read to them. You had some people saying, see, she said that it didn't happen. She said that it lied. And so therefore that proves his innocence beyond anything. And again, these were text messages that were sent from him to his girlfriend. These are things that have to go through court. I lost my train of thought, but these are the text messages that we saw. So again, that's part of Jonathan Major's evidence. And so this is I think that this is, I'm sorry, I didn't even get the top of that. I am assuming that this is the New York Post article. So sorry, y'all. I believe that that's the New York Post article. It's either the New York Post article or it is the TMZ article. But I'm making more assumptions that it is the way the headlines look. It looks like the New York Post article. So this is the information that they received from the court after the defense had filed their motion to have this case or have the charges dropped and dismissed and everything. So mind you, we're talking about this report was dated April 20th. This article was dated April 20th. So this is almost a month after the incident happened. And the article basically says, if you can see it, that Jonathan Majors claims new video and witness proves he did not choke girlfriend. And so what I'm going to show you, these are just some of the stills that I got from that article and TMZ, that TMZ article. And this is the evidence presented by Jonathan Majors' attorney. So let's get into the videos that we see and what we were told that meant. Now, Remember back when I read to you the initial charges that, according what was reported to the police by the victim, that that Jonathan had did an open slap to her face. They had an altercation in the cab, that he slapped her and he choked her. So this is a still from the Moxie Hotel, subcellar level Moxie, whatever. So this is a video. This is security video from that hotel, and it is dated. It is time stamped at 2:33:02 a.m. So this was at that point about an hour after the alleged assault. And they show the girlfriend giving something to the DA. And the reason why they're talking about this being important is because the victim stated that through the altercation that she had with Jonathan Majors in the car, that she broke her finger. Somewhere in there, he broke her finger. That's how her finger was broken. And so the defense is saying, well, if her finger is broken, how is she handling, because it's on her right hand, her finger on her right hand. I don't know which finger. She's handing something to the DJ. They also show here, now this is at 3:03 a.m. from that same hotel, their security cameras. They're showing her using her hand, it looks like to text or whatever. They show her using her hand, and they're saying, well, she's using her hand. How is her finger broken? This is still from the police officer's body cam that shows her, and this was like at 11:48 a.m. On the 25th. So this is the body cam footage showing the victim at that time. She's standing. She appears to be alert, but you look at her face, you look at her neck. We don't see the laceration because this is her left side, not her right side. So we do not get to see the laceration on her or behind her ear, or any blood behind her ear. We do see her. She looks like she just woke up in the morning time. She just looks she does through the eyes look a little bewildered. And I don't know exactly what that is, but that's what she appears to me. Again, we see this particular still, and I have seen this on different videos, and I've also seen this on TMZ's they do like a little podcast or whatever show. But this is supposed to be showing that the victim, not only she is using her hand, but this is also part of the video where they show that she bumped her head on the DJ platform. And this was just a picture, but apparently this is the girlfriend. So we want to talk about, clearly, that's the evidence, that's the information that we got about the incident, that's the stuff that we lost. So then, I did talk about the court of public opinion and what is going on with the court of public opinion right now. So we're going to kind of go over domestic violence in the era of the Me Too movement. We're going to talk about the American justice system and the Black man. Again, we're not going in depth, but we're just using these subjects to kind of tie in on where the opinions are coming from in the court of public opinion. We're going to also talk about interracial dating in America and the stigmas attached to that. And we're going to talk about also what was coming out in public opinion is Hollywood's treatment of Black men being accused of a crime and white men being accused of a crime and white men being convicted of a crime. And so when you talk about, with the domestic violence, and here is the court of public opinion, and this is where you have a big split, because you have women say, believe all women, until the facts and everything comes out. You need to believe the women and what they're telling you, because this is something that women have been going through for eons. It's just here in the modern times where we are looking at, there have been legislations and laws and things like that are being put in place to be of assistance to women who do suffer from domestic violence. And so with the Me Too movement, it's like you need to believe all women. And part of that, with that believing with all women, you have men saying, well, we believe women, but we also do understand that there have been women who have lied, who have said that a man has done something to them. And a lot of times that comes out because the woman finds out that the man has been cheating or doing something else, and that the woman will cry that something has happened to her, and it hasn't, just so that he can have a consequence for the cheating, with the that he can have a consequence. And since they can't give him a consequence for the cheating, they're going to give him a consequence with the law, because they know, men say that women know that they have the power to do that. Part of the public discourse, that's what I'm going to call it, is that the perpetrator is guilty until proven innocent. And in the court of public opinion, it is the perpetrator's job to prove his innocence, not that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. Is that you're guilty. Now that I know that you're guilty, you need to prove to me that you're innocent. And we also live in the age of cancel culture. Once something happens, there is no longer, hey, this person did something. Yes, they did. Is there an area to be able to be redeemed? There is. Cancel culture tells you no. Cancel culture says that person, just short of eliminating them from breathing on God's green earth, that they should be canceled. They shouldn't be able to work. They shouldn't be able to be out in public. They shouldn't be able to do anything. They really shouldn't really be able to exist. Once they've done something and they have gotten on this bad side of the public, they should no longer ever be able to do anything within the culture. And that is the era that we live now. And so we have seen that happen. One of the things that I know a lot of people mention is Johnny Depp. A lot of people mention to the fact that, Johnny Depp was accused of, I'm not really sure what he was accused of, but it was bad behavior. It was on the level of criminal behavior. And Hollywood basically canceled him. They took away his roles, his jobs, or anything. And so within this culture, and within this Me Too culture, you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And that's what Johnny Depp had to do. Johnny Depp went to court and he had to sue, and he had to show that Amber Heard, and I believe that was a defamation case, that she defamed him with all of this stuff, and it wasn't the truth. So now you have all of this going on. So you have, again, the discourse is believe all victims on one side, and then in the middle is like the perpetrator is responsible for proving himself innocent. You have men saying, see, this is a problem, that there is no consequence for women when they do these things for us. Men believe that Amber Heard didn't get the consequence she needed for lying about the abuse that she suffered from Johnny Depp. They believe that she got no consequences, and that women can get out here and they can say what they want to say, and then there are no consequences when it's shown that what they've said is not the truth. Ooh, that was a mouthful, y'all, and that was a lot too. Let me just take a couple of breaths before we go on to the next slide, because it's so important to breathe through all of this. So then we want to talk about one of the things in particularly from Black men, which is valid points, is the American justice system and the Black man. Now, this is coming up from the fact that when these allegations happened, that Jonathan Majors was immediately arrested, even though it was proven that he had called for an ambulance for his girlfriend because she was passed out in the walk-in closet, and you could see signs where she had vomited. Um, at this point, one of the things that I did not mention before that I will mention now is the fact that it was discovered that she had been drinking all night, and she had taken a few sleeping pills, and we all know that sleeping pills and alcohol, that can be a very dangerous and up to lethal combination. And so a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, he calls an ambulance because of this. And then you all go into this about her having a fight, and now he is being arrested. And that just seems like if he'd have been a white man, they don't believe that he would have been arrested. Now, I will clarify that according to New York law, that they have a law in the books that when there is a domestic violence situation, if they can see if they can see visible marks or visible signs of uh, an assault, that the person who is stated to be the perpetrator will be arrested on the spot. Uh, even when she recants, if the state sees that there is credible evidence that they can prosecute, and they can do it without the victim um, signing or stating that she wants this person arrested, they can do it without that person. If they find if they see probable cause for that, they can arrest him and they can go to court even without the victim's cooperation. So that is something that's in New York that they can do. But men are saying, and particularly Black men are feeling like, listen, here we are. We're damned if we do and we damned if we don't. And a lot of that has to do with the biases that Black men face within the criminal justice system. You know, we know that Black men make up what, 13% of the United States, but they're represented at 35% of the prison population here in the United States. And that doesn't seem to, those numbers and those things don't seem to add. If you're 13% and then you're 35% of the prison population, something doesn't seem right. What is going on? And there's a lot of disparities with how the American public, what their biases are towards Black men, and also the criminalization. Somewhere, somehow, they believe that Black men are more prone for criminal activity than white men, which we know that that's just not the case, or any other race of men. But these are some of the things that are going on in the public discourse when we're talking about this case. This case brought up a lot of that. So if we're going to recap real quickly, this case brought up the discourse of domestic violence, uh, living in the era of Me Too, and how uh, in the public arena you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent, instead of the other way around. But the other way around is actually criminal court. You're innocent until proven guilty. In the court of public opinion, you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. So you have a lot of times people trying to balance that, of trying to win favor in the public eye and then having to fight the case in court. And so, again, we've got one issue about domestic violence and how we're to handle that. We have domestic violence within the Me Too movement about believe all women. We have men saying, hey, women can lie on us, and then we're having to deal. They're mad at us because we made a mistake within our relationship, and then the consequence that we're facing is that we're having to deal with the American justice system because we ran afoul of their trust and we ran afoul of their heart, or whatever that, and that the punishment there doesn't match. It doesn't match. And then when they have proven that they didn't do what was said that they did, they don't have a recourse to for that person to have charges or anything like that. So this is what we're hearing right now within the public discourse, and this is one of the things. The other thing that's going on is the talk of interracial dating and the stigma of tax. So we're going to go from this, we're going to go through the eyes, and particularly because Jonathan Majors is a Black man, we're going to go within the Black community. We talk about the discourse that is going on is that Jonathan Majors spent a lot of time telling everybody that he was single, that he was not in a relationship, he was a single man. And we see a lot of Black women upset with him, you know, number one, for dating a white woman, because if you look at statistics, Black women are the most race loyal as far as with dating. So more Black women date Black men than and vice and pretty much vice versa. But there is a stigma about dating outside of your race. And they believe that, you know, he was saying all those different things. He didn't mention that he was in a relationship or anything. So there is this public discourse about he was pandering to Black women to get their support to go to their movies and all these other things. They talked about how he lied on the relationship and how that lying is causing part of the reason, part of the problem that he's in. There is a lot of discourse about Black men and Black women in dating relationships and how these relationships are fetished or fetishized. The fetish comes from some Black men believe that white women are the epitome of womanhood, and that is what they want to, or the star or the prize, that white women are the better women. White women date Black men because they believe that Black men are have big penises and they're very sexually astute, and that they have a level of danger about them, back and forth. A lot of discourse comes in from a white woman accusing a Black man of violence, and Black men will come back and say, you know, you remember Emmett Till, you have Carolyn Bryant, who just passed away recently, who lied on a 14-year-old child, saying that he had done something, which then the effect of her saying that caused this young boy to have a very violent death. And some people, and this was interesting to me, and I think maybe I touched on it earlier, about Black men believe that he's winning because he's having this beautiful woman, this woman who society says is beautiful. He has her until law enforcement is called, and now all of a sudden, oh, she's trying to get me hurt. She's trying to do these things, and you know, a lot of Black folks are saying, well, you should have thought about that before you dated this. You know, if you don't have this conversation about how it is important to understand when you call the police on a Black man, it better be what you say that's going on, or the consequences are going to be grave. Another issue going on in the public discourse, and this has been mentioned a lot on Twitter, the treatment that Hollywood is giving Jonathan Majors versus the treatment of Ezra Miller. So if you're not familiar with Ezra Miller is an actor who right now is about to hit. The movie that's coming out for Ezra Miller is the Flash movie. But we know that Ezra Miller has had run-ins with the law in different countries and in different states within the United States of America. But yet Hollywood continues to give him opportunity after opportunity. And even, I think I read so much so now, I think the makeup artist or the costume designer of the show that's coming out for the Flash has even made a statement that, you know, once you see the work that Ezra Miller has done in this movie, people will then start to view Ezra Miller or forget the crimes that were filed against Ezra Miller. Versus, so just look at the charges that we have with Ezra Miller versus the charges that we have with Jonathan Majors. Now, when I say versus, I don't mean that one is better than the other or this or anything, but I am saying that when you look at all the things that Jonathan Majors has lost within a month's time versus what is going on with Ezra Miller as throughout the time, you do see that Hollywood is doing, there's something going on. And I don't know exactly what that is, but as far as public discourse, it's like, oh, Ezra Miller can get away with a whole bunch of stuff that Jonathan Majors can't get away with. He loses everything up front. Ezra Miller has lost things on the back end. So let's just go down. We'll just go down this, and then we'll be right at the conclusion of this video. So on Jonathan Major's side, we have his March 2023 arrest for misdemeanor assault, aggravated harassment, attempted assault, and harassment, and this comes from TMZ. On Ezra Miller's side, we have 2011. He had a marijuana possession that was dismissed. In the January of 2022, he delivered some cryptic message to the Ku Klux Klan. And part of that message says something about continue what you all do. So there are some racial inflammatory things coming from that. And that's just in 2022. In March of 2022, he was charged with this. Ezra Miller was charged with disorderly conduct and harassment in Hawaii. Also in March of 2022, Ezra Miller gets a restraining order filed against him. We also see in April of 2020, he was charged, or I don't know if he was charged or there was video shown of him choking a woman in Iceland. And we also see that he was charged and arrested for second-degree assault in Hawaii. He's also accused of grooming a child on the Standing Rock Sioux Tribal Court in North Dakota. So this is dealing with our indigenous brothers and sisters. And we also see that he's accused of menacing, resulting in a restraining order. Now, all this information comes from People Magazine website and the Bleeding Fool website. And I think that last charge was in Connecticut. So we see the two things, and we also see, now people will say, well, Ezra Miller has lost a lot of different things. But we also see in the public, and when you look at, especially when they have done several threads on Twitter about it, Ezra Miller has lost a lot of stuff on the back end. You know, he didn't lose all of his things up front. He lost things on the back end. So he was already well paid before he was even before he went back and forth. Let me backtrack. One of the things that they were talking about between in public discourse between Ezra Miller and Jonathan Majors was the fact that they were saying that Ezra Miller was getting some preferential treatment because Ezra Miller is part of the LGBTQIA community. And they're saying that if Jonathan Majors was part of that community, then he would be getting some preferential treatment. That is one of the things that are going around within the public discourse. So that is all I have. My conclusion is going to be this. This is just an overview of all the information that has been going on since we got the news that Jonathan Majors had been arrested for assault. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this situation. This, like I said, there is a court hearing happening either tomorrow or Tuesday. So this is May 7th. So there's a court hearing either happening on May 8th or May 9th. So we will see, I guess we will see the results of this case, or whether or not that they're going to go to trial on May 8th or May 9th. So tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about the public discourse. Where do you all stand with the public discourse? Or is there something that I did not mention that is also going on in the public discourse about this case and how Jonathan Majors is currently being viewed by the public? If you like what you've seen, please give me a like, hit that thumbs up button. Also, if you be so kind, hit that subscribe button. Once you hit that subscribe button, you will be opened to a plethora of videos of movies and television series that I have reviewed. All right, let's get us back to where we need to be. All right. Okay, here we are. Whew, that was a lot. We went through a lot, and I hope that you all enjoyed that presentation. Again, if you like what you see, please hit that like button. And as always, people, bye-bye.